Can you hear me, sir?
Yep, I can hear you. Is that you, Greg, on desktop?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you don't mind.
I don't know how to change the name.
I'll go ahead and do that for you here.
And let me make sure my camera has a reasonable background for me. There you go. I don't have a green screen, so it's giving me all types of problems today. I'm not a Zoomer. Can you see the screen, sir?
Yeah, I can see the field behind you, but it's okay. Like I said, but without a green screen, it's blending your hair in a little bit and stuff like that. But
that's the best I can do without you seeing my room that we're in that we're not usually using.
There it goes, getting repeat there because I started it out on YouTube and I always try and remember to pause it because otherwise it talks like a few seconds later. All right, and I think we're good to go there. We're going to give it a couple minutes, let people start joining in the room. Usually, like I say, about 2 minutes after, I will read off our meeting disclaimer and then we'll get rolling from there. So we'll give it just a couple more minutes here, folks. Yeah, a couple more seconds here and then we'll get rolling. I was trying to message out to a couple people. I got a message back from a couple that are otherwise occupied tonight. But as you know, we always have a couple people join us later as well. And we also know that we have a couple folks that like to just view us on the live stream on YouTube. So all right, we just clicked over to 7:02, so we might as well get started here. My name is Scott Weldon. I am the Executive Director of the South Carolina chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, and this is the South Carolina NORML Cannabis Conversation. I'd like to start by welcoming everybody who's here on the call with me this evening. Welcome to anybody who might be watching our live stream on YouTube, and also anybody who might be watching the YouTube as a recording a little bit later on down the road. Welcome to everybody. As I do mention YouTube, I do like to point out that during our live stream, we are not actually monitoring the comments on the YouTube channel. So if you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them down below or off to the side or wherever your device post the comments to. And after the video is done rendering on YouTube, usually within about 24 hours, we will come back and visit the comments and questions comment section and trying to address your questions, comments, and/or concerns. Let me go ahead and get things out of the way by starting with our disclaimer. All of our meetings are an environment of education and awareness and are not an open market for the sale, purchase, or distribution of cannabis. We do not encourage or condone illegal behavior of any kind. All right, let me kick that little buddy off to the side here so it doesn't get in my way. And again, another real quick welcome to everybody who's here on the call with us tonight. We have a very special guest with us tonight, a candidate for the House of Representatives on the District 98 here in South Carolina, Mr. Greg Ford. I am going to real quick share a link down in the chat here from his page to give you a little bit more information about Greg. And what we're really going to do is we've invited him on through the suggestion of one of our supporters and viewers, which I believe lives in his district. And they thought they wanted to hear a little bit from him about his campaign and his marijuana policy position. With that, I'm just going to turn it over to Greg Ford, ask him to introduce himself, tell us a little bit about himself, and then kind of get right on into it. Greg, you good to go?
Yes, sir.
All righty. Welcome. Thank you for being with us.
So guys, first off, I apologize about not having a green screen. I am not a Zoomer. This is a room that I'm not usually using, so I do apologize about that in the background. So my name is Greg Ford. I am running for District 98. It's down in Somerville area. It's down at just north of the Charleston Air Force Base area if you're down in this district. We are running for a House of Representatives seat. I am not a politician by any stretch of the imagination. I come about this when I start watching the civil liberties and rights that we have being trampled on by our federal government on a daily basis. So I've decided to go ahead and step outside of my comfort zone and run for a House seat to possibly help. So my career prior to what I'm doing right now, I'm a retired Air Force, retired in 2017 after just over 20 years. Combat veteran. I have 1,453 days in a combat zone, Iraq, Afghanistan. Spent some time in roughly about 92 countries during my time. I was on a C-17 flying. I am a Citadel graduate. I am working on a doctoral degree, doctorate of education. I'm up to a dissertation in organizational leadership at Charleston Southern University. I've taken a little bit of time off to focus on my farm. That's what brings me to you guys here. I stumbled into the hemp program in the state of South Carolina in 2018, shortly after retirement. I was an extension off of one of the first 20 growers. 2019, I was actually an extension off of one of the 100 additional growers right before the 180 extension. And then I was the number 7 processor for the state. So I helped do quite a bit with the hemp program within the state. This is near and dear to my heart because we actually got into it for my son. He has severe seizures, and I don't know if you guys know about the CBD content and THC and things along those lines in the cannabis plant. And my son is nonverbal, physically handicapped, mentally handicapped. He's 20 years old at this time and has severe seizures to the point where I've given him CPR twice off of a seizure. So I took this very seriously when I started messing with the cannabis plant, particularly hemp, because that's what I was legally obligated to do. I am a retiree. I have a VA rating. The VA has come out and said anyone messing with cannabis is potentially going to lose some ratings. And I do hold an opportunity to work in some specialized programs within the United States Air Force still through some classified programs. So I'm not going to jeopardize that messing with cannabis, particularly marijuana, at this particular moment in time. I did talk to Scott the other day. I was a little leery about coming to speak with you guys, but cannabis is cannabis. We're talking about a chemical at this point, Delta 9 THC specifically. I am well versed in the Delta 9 in the cannabis side. I'm working with a couple of farmers that's out of Oklahoma, Michigan, that's growing actual cannabis, and in Virginia, he's doing some home grow since they just legalized up there for home use. We're messing with that a little bit. He's the one that's funding the stuff out in Oklahoma and Michigan. So give you an idea, when I go out there, we're working with about 40 acres in Oklahoma, actually 60 acres in Oklahoma, 40 acres in Michigan, and we're going to be pushing upwards of 100 acres when everything's said and done in Virginia. So when we started looking at the Compassionate Care Act, which is what Scott and I spoke about the other day, I've been, reading this bill quite a bit and trying to make up a really good pointed assumption about these bills and the direction I would like to go. So that's what I'm here for tonight. Hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of background on me. Scott, would you like for me to remain with the video on, or would you like for me to cut it off and just talk? What would you like for me to do at this point?
Video's fine by me. It's not distracting at all. So it's up to you if you want to leave it on or not.
I'm okay either way, as long as your viewers are not, bothered by it. I'm fine with it.
No, I haven't seen any comments that come into me or anything. So I think we're all good.
Okay, perfect. So however you like to get into the bill or stances or whichever way, I'm good with whatever direction you like to go, sir.
Similarly, what we spoke about the other day, your overall point of view. Actually, I wouldn't mind you touching a little bit because you made some good points on the Compassionate Care Act, especially some of the amendments that have been written and the restrictions of like 2 acres per grow and that type of thing. And you had mentioned some insight on that I'd like to hear.
Okay. So reading down through the bill, I believe it's under section 11. The way they have this bill identified, numbers are redundant throughout it. They're going to give out 15 grow permits or cultivation permits, 30 processing permits, 4 transport permits, and it sounds like 1 pharmacist per 20 pharmacies, or something along those lines. 2 acres per cultivation site. They intertwine it with the hemp program quite a bit throughout this. I sit here for about the last hour to acquaint myself with the specifics on this. And it looks like they're trying to go, it's under section K, 15 cultivation center license, 30 processing, 4 transport, 1 therapeutic cannabis pharmacy license for every 20 pharmacists within the state, and then 5 independent test labs. So when we start looking at this, this is one of the sections that really troubles me because they're intertwining the hemp program inside of this. And there's actually one comment in here that in order to get one of these licenses, you have to have 2 years within the hemp program, or, some different points of business that's actually operated within 2 years, a processor that's working within 2 years, all these different things. So this is one of my most troubling areas with the bill. And it's because of the supply chain. We know that right around 15 acres, if they grow it outside, depending on what cultivar these guys use, most of the guys here, if we want a solid plant, they're probably going to use something like an ACDC the wife, Afghan Kush, any of these grow decently down here. Same thing as a hemp plant. They'll use something along those lines. If we plant them out there about 1,000 to 1,200 per acre, we're going to get 1,000 pounds if we grow them to full maturity. Once we start doing the extraction, do these processing plants, they've actually required us to do it down into oils. I've read down through here, it doesn't appear that they're going to allow flour to come out unless it's through some sort of an edible. And if we go from flour to oil, we're going to get about 49 kilos per acre of 1,000 pound. And then it's going to be roughly about 60% if everything works out, Delta 9 THC. So we're going to reduce that down. Reason I mentioned those numbers is they're looking at probably about 150,000 folks to get these permits from everything I've read or looked at, or their expectations. If we start looking at that 49 kilos, that's going to give us 4,900 or 49,000 dosings of 1 milligrams per. It's going to be about 750,000 doses. And then there goes through here and they talk about the actual quantity that you're allowed to have per month. I can't find it real quick through here, but I was remembering something. It was like a milligram dosing, or there was an ounce or gram dosing. If we start looking at that, we're going to be reduced in our supply chain with what they've come off of. So I have a significant problem with that. One, it's gearing it up for a good old boy program who has the money at the right time. And then the processing, they've also mentioned in here somewhere that you can't have a vertical operation. So I can't own a grow, a processing, and a dispensary. So that's going to cost us as farmers a little bit of a trouble. And then once we start getting into the actual licensing, that's a little bit of a trouble to me as well. And then they limited us to vapes, salves, and lotions. I can't find that in here again either. I had it highlighted on another version. But they have a whole section in here on where it's talking about, uses through your hair and through your skin. Well, me working with CBD, I know CBD will absorb through the skin, get into the C1 or CB1 and CB2 receptors within the human body. But if we're trying to do this for seizures, I don't believe their method of ingestion is going to be right. And then once we start looking at the vaporizing, I can't have my son vaping it for his seizures. So we probably have to do a little bit of work in these two areas, in my opinion. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes. Yeah, I think it does. I was just sort of tracking down the newest version here of the compassionate care bill. So I'm going to share that link down in the chat real quick in case anybody else would like to look at that.
There is no mention of tinctures anywhere within the bill that I found.
Okay, yeah, I have not been through the entire bill, so I cannot address that. Though I know that during the debates they were discussing it, but yeah, I am not seeing it.
I could do a Control F and see if it comes up with anything for tinctures.
If you would, I don't have that option on the version I'm on here. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind giving it a shot, just out of curiosity.
If you go under section 4, cannabis products means a product that is infused with or otherwise contain cannabis or extract thereof and intended use consumption. It talks about the term includes but not limited to the edible cannabis products, beverages, topical products, ointments, oils, patches, sprays, suppositories, or tinctures. So it does mention tinctures, but when you start going down through the packaging section, that's where I believe it said we're stuck at salves, lotions, or topical, basically. salves, lotions, or vapes, I believe was the 3 words that they put in there. This is a new version that they uploaded. It looks like they uploaded this roughly about, the last update was the 15th of February. And it appears that this is actually 9 February's amendment. And this is not the version I had the other day.
Okay, yeah, this is the last version when it actually got the third reading out of the Senate.
Yes, sir. It's pretty clear they don't want flour out there, which in my opinion, we've been fighting it through the hemp program for flour this entire time since 2018. If you start messing with extracts from flour and you put it in certain vape sources, it's really difficult to use an uncut crude product in a vape cartridge. So you have to reduce it with terpenes. And if you use the wrong terpene, it's going to make it taste like garbage, or which way. Or if we have to put it into a standard vape cartridge, it's propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin, right around a 60-40 split. If you go to sub-ohm, it's a 70-30. And once you start messing with propylene glycol, there's some data out there that basically talks about propylene glycol. When you hit it with about 400 degrees Celsius in a vape, it molecularly changes to formaldehyde, and you're breathing that into your lungs. So they're basically telling me the only way I can do this is through a vape, which could cause me problems. Yeah, I'll be cured of my pains, but 10 years from now, I'm going to have cancer of the lungs. So, but flour, if you burning it off, there's some documentation out there also that you lose right around between 60 and 70% of your oils through vaporizing right out when you hit it with the certain amount of heat. It'll burn it off. So we have a little bit of issue with that as well. So we got to figure out what's the proper method of use and go from there. And these folks right here, I will spend some time with Representative or Senator Davis that's pushing this bill. I'm going down to Beaufort to have a conversation with him, and we'll go from there. Some use MCT. Yes, sir. I am familiar with that. MCT, when you actually ingest it, it makes it taste like garbage as well if you don't have the right actual cultivar that you're using. So yes, I am aware of that.
And I would like to sort of point out in this discussion, we've talked about it a number of times on our program, that Senator Davis has repeated a number of times that he understands that flour can have better efficacy, especially with vets who are suffering PTSD, but he pulled it from the bill simply to appease law enforcement because they can't differentiate the smell of burning marijuana, medical marijuana, from burning hemp flour. And so again, it's doing a disservice, in my opinion, to the consumer, to the patient.
So here's my struggle with that particular stance. I was at a event the other day, and a young man pulls out CBD cigarettes. We can buy them right now at Charleston e-cig. We can buy them at 540 Smoke and Vape. I can stand there and smoke weak hemp cigarettes that are basically flour in a piece of paper. And I actually sold through my business pre-rolls not too long back. And we can smoke that, but when you burn marijuana versus hemp, it's the same smell, same everything. You can't differentiate the difference, but yet they're kind of okay with, cigarettes, hemp cigarettes versus this. So I have a little bit of struggle. And when you drive down the road, hemp cigarettes, if they field test it, it's going to tell you we will have the same positive test as if it was marijuana. It will test the same.
Right. Now, I don't know a lot about the field tests, except for the fact that some of the reports that I've seen, even a 2020 report on about a year ago or so, talking about the inaccuracy of them. Not always for cannabis, but we've seen reports of them testing bird poop off of somebody's windshield and it tests positive for cocaine, or the powder from somebody's Krispy Kreme donut and they tested it and it tested positive for meth, and stories like that we all quite often hear. And that's something that, as an advocate, I really of civil rights, civil liberties, I really wish there was a way we could address that, the use of these inaccurate tests, because they could jeopardize people's freedom.
Absolutely. So one of your subscribers right here, Joey, mentioned something about resins. Neither of those are mentioned in the bill that I remember. It looks like what they want us to do is take it down to a crude form, put it into a vape cartridge, a lotion. It talks about a lotion or salve having no more than 4,000 milligrams or 4,000 milligrams of Delta 9 THC. So they're going to go right down to the Delta 9. That's what they're trying to regulate. So I don't believe we're going to be able to do resins, or they don't. So if you go down to paraphernalia, that was one of the sections. It says bongs, pipes, and something else used for smoking cannabis products. So that would lead me to believe that they don't want smoking at all other than a vape. If that answers your question, Mr. Joey.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. What section am I in here?
Further towards the bottom.
I'm up near the top, just for the sort of talking about definitions. Smoking or smoke means the inhalation of. But yes, that is really, because that to law enforcement is the switch that says that's an illegal behavior. You're smoking this, and smelling the burning, leaf or flower. They're looking for that switch or that trigger where they can then affect an arrest. If they don't smell it burning, it's more challenging for them than to flip that switch.
So it's section 22. It's called paraphernalia, and it says the intended purpose. It says if the sole intended purpose of use is for cannabis products, except that it shall not include bongs, pipes, rolling papers, blotch torch or blow torches, or any other paraphernalia that is used to smoke cannabis. So that tells me they don't want us smoking it at all. And yes, it'll go into 510 cartridge. It will definitely go into 510 cartridges.
Okay. Before we move on, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Ford about the Compassionate Care Act, the S-150 bill? Otherwise, we did talk a little bit about your position on federal descheduling, and if you could talk about that a little bit with us.
Absolutely. So federal descheduling, we had a conversation, Scott, you and I, before I agreed to come on here. This is one of the most tricky situations that we could probably be put in. I'm going to look at it from my son's side. I'm going to look at it from a veteran side, and I'm going to look at it from a military or a government employee. So from my son's side, I believe federal or state deregulation would help because he's not attached to any of those entities. As a veteran, it talks about in here, you can't get any type of permits or card or whatever they label it as, a medicinal card, if you have a job that deals with carrying a gun, a weapon, anything along those lines. So this bill is not going to help any veteran that's out there. The VA, I mentioned earlier, the VA has already come out and said that they will not approve Delta 9 or marijuana as a suitable therapeutic. So I can lose my VA rating that I have had, from serving in the military and retirement from the military. So no firefighter is going to be able to do this. No cop, no military veteran that's within our state. But people who have no attachment to any of those could potentially get this user card. So that leads me to believe most of our issues needs to lay at the federal level. And there's a couple different things that goes into that. One, will release the Delta 9 specifically off of the Controlled Substance Act. So we'll be able to actually grow our hemp over 0.3%. We won't have our fields taken. We can actually have marijuana grow. We can open up a different economic class or economic advantages from the plant itself. We'll actually release it from the Controlled Act, which will free up some of the veterans. The VA will be able to use it, some different things, because some of our veterans, I believe can use this stuff. There are several out there that is using these items that are not necessarily controlled or in the safest manner, which that is their choice, is not mine. It'll also free up the FDIC section of it. So if we start running one of these dispensaries, you can't take the money to the bank. You can't use Square. You can't do anything. It's all cash. So that's a big issue with it. Farmers can't get loans to grow it. So the 15 permits here is going to have folks that comes out of the woodworks with mega money that's been in Colorado making money, or Washington or wherever. And they're going to come in here and basically take an opportunity from the state of South Carolina individuals. So I believe the federal level is where we need to start looking. These are all steps in the right direction. I don't know that this is the right direction that we need to be following at this time, in my opinion. Just to be clear, I am 100% in favor of using natural resources to treat ailments. If that means cannabis, if that means hemp, if that means whatever, I am 100% on board with that. My son, for his seizures, we have taken his seizures from 1 or 2 a week, that's very severe, with 2 of them, me giving him CPR off of, and stretched him out to 16 weeks. And he has barely any breakthroughs. So I am a 100% believer in natural remedies. In fact, right before I got on here, I was reading a paper through my doctoral level that I was talking about using cannabis, either marijuana. In fact, I referenced marijuana in it from Colorado, and how they funded some of the state school system and then the different products. So there is advantages economically and through medicinal value of these plants.
Okay, and as we've talked about on the program here before, we know there are currently 4 descheduling bills at the federal level, 3 of which include some sort of reparative justice, 1 that does not. And we're hoping to see some action on them moving forward. Most recently, we've heard Nancy Mace's bill is supposed to be receiving a hearing in the near future. What I call COA, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, is supposed to be officially submitted in April at some point, is the word on that. And the MORE Act has been active, but again, it's one of those things that we're kind of what we call waiting, seeing which one will win the race to the top. I'm going to real quick see what's going on here in comments here. Okay. One other thing I would sort of like to talk about, and I know we're a little different on our positions on decrim. NORML in South Carolina is actually starting to try and step up, trying to work on decrim at the local level, at the municipal level. But you have a little bit of a different take on it. We'd like to hear your input.
So at this point, looking at everything that's out there, we do have laws on the book that talks about Delta 9 THC, and this stuff is not legal within the state. Now, being a hemp farmer, I have people, you guys all heard about the guy in St. George that had his hemp farm mowed down because he didn't have a GPS coordinates. We had 160 acres of hemp actually burned because it was over the Delta 9 THC limit. We've had people that's been locked up, charged. We have a lot of things going on. So my opinion right this second is we have laws on the books. We have to follow those laws. If we don't follow those laws, we now jeopardize the law enforcement and different things like that. The justification for reduced, I mean, you mentioned laws that they put in place right now to reduce nonviolent criminal time served. My opponent actually just authored that bill that takes the mandatory time served from 85% down to 65%. It was not due to the charges these individuals actually had. It was based on the criminal, the justice jail system to reduce some stuff on that. So here's my thing on that. If we don't decriminalize it, and I'm not looking at it for the guy that has, 5 grams in his pocket that he wants to smoke a joint. My opinion, if you want to do that, I don't care. That's your take on it. I'm looking at the guys that are doing hemp. We ran 5 18-wheelers down the interstate with 30,000 pounds of hemp on it, wide open, and run it completely from by Greenville to Charleston, South Carolina. No one stopped us. So if we start decriminalizing within a state, guys who, want to run some significant volume of cannabis, we're opening the doors for that. And then we're going to have a bigger problem with our law enforcement. So that kind of drives me to the federal decriminalization slightly quicker than the South Carolina decriminalization. But we have to figure out a way to make compassionate care or the medical side happen at the same time without making it completely illegal for everybody to have. So trying to grapple through that, how to get that completed at this time.
Okay, I do want to just kind of explain a little bit. The decrim that South Carolina NORML is trying to implement really only affects the simple possession based in South Carolina. That is 28 grams or less. So that applies to like the guy with, a couple of grams in his pocket, but 29 grams and above, that's a whole nother world. And a local decrim ordinance would not affect that. It would only affect the under 28 gram amount.
Which bill is that?
That's not a bill. There are actually decrim bills. Let me pull up my other clipboard here. There are 3 decrim bills in the legislature right now. A quick flip through my notes to find exactly the page I'm looking for.
There's 175 bills out there or something right now in the House that I'm trying to track on and trying to keep track of every one of them's. Like I tell everybody I'm dealing with, it's like herding feral cats.
It's easier for me to find it right on the State House page. The 3 decrim bills. There we go. They're all House bills, H3571, H3228, and H3672. The only one with significant number of co-sponsors on it is H3228, sponsored by Henderson Myers. And last count I had was 23 co-sponsors on that bill. A real quick look at that bill. It is, but basically affects the penalty process of 28 grams or less, or 10 grams of hashish, which I don't even know if you can find hashish anymore. um, Actually, that one goes into more than I expected, because that is not in the 50 micrograms of lysergic acid diethylamide, 15 tablets of capsule. Ew. Yeah, see that, I thought it was strictly just cannabis related in there, because all we're looking for is, affecting the cannabis laws at this point. Let me check one of these other bills. 3571 might be a little bit more accurate. Yeah, 3571, which is sponsored by Thigpen and Johnson, basically is to reduce penalties for less than an ounce of marijuana or 10 grams of hashish. It doesn't talk about any of those other substances in that particular bill. And what we're looking to do here at South Carolina NORML is basically work on the municipal level to try to implement decrim ordinances at the municipal level, of, again, affecting just the 28 grams or less of marijuana and or 10 grams of hashish or less. I'm not looking to decrim possession of any other drugs or substances at that point. And again, decriminalization, as I like to mention to our viewers on a regular basis, is sort of a misnomer of a word. It really does not remove the criminality of it. It just affects the penalty phase of it. What they've been doing a lot in Ohio, I believe at least 20 of the 20, last count 27 municipalities that they've decrimmed up there are doing what they call a no fine, no time, no court cost decriminalization. Whereas the other ones that do have decrim have made it like a parking ticket type, maybe $100 or $25 parking ticket type offense or penalty. But I know when we were speaking the other day, you had talked about the quick steps it could take to federal level. And that is basically anything over that 28 grams, then they start to say, oh, well, now you've got enough for distribution. Or if you're growing a plant, I've had actually local folks come to me and say, hey, I've been arrested for one single plant and they're filing federal manufacturing and distribution charges against me. And that is something that a simple decrim bill would not affect in any way.
So this bill that I'm reading right here under section 2A, it actually talks about possessing less than 1 gram of methamphetamines or cocaine based also as guilty of a misdemeanor. So if you start reading down through, this is a lot more in this as well.
You're right. I am seeing that down here below.
They're adding quite a bit more stuff to it. If it was only, 28 grams or 20, whatever the grams are of marijuana, it starts talking about LSD or its compound, 15 tablets, methamphetamines.
And these are all, I must say, now that I'm looking closer at the others, what they sort of did was they took the same language and I guess they all just kind of duplicated it and submitted it. And be quite honest with you, even as a marijuana advocate, I would not support moving this forward at this point. I mean, as a personal level, I sort of feel that drug use should be a medical issue and not a criminal issue. But to be able to move legislation forward, this really muddies the water when they start including things besides cannabis into these bills.
So I would be willing, when I get to the House, to support a personal use in some capacity bill that is marijuana only.
Only. I agree. So that's what I would like to see. Something
and
like
that would, and I would like to see something along the lines of like Virginia, who was it that just did it? It was 6 budding plants that you can grow. So where I'm not relying on a supply chain, there needs to be some, but here's the deal. We talked the other day. I personally I find marijuana smell, slightly offensive, same as CBD. So I would like to see something more along the lines of regulation like alcohol. If you want to do it at your own home, I don't care. You don't come out in the streets, don't come do it. And that goes for CBD cigarettes as well. It's just as offensive as marijuana, smell wise when you're out. So if you want to do that at home, I don't care. So, that's kind of the stance I would take. My biggest thing is I want federal government out of my business, and this is one of them as well. So if that answers any questions for you or muddies the water even more for you.
No, actually, it does answer questions for me, because now that I've taken a closer look at these, I don't think I realized at some point that these had included the decrim of other substances, even though small amounts. Like I said, that muddies the waters for this type of legislation. And really, what our efforts are, again, here at South Carolina NORML, is to work on decrim or depenalization of simple possession of marijuana and or paraphernalia, and let this other stuff for the other organizations to fight, because that, in my opinion, is not NORML's fight.
So one of your, Kyle mentioned it right here, was hit and miss in Arizona, Proposition 207. So if we start looking at Colorado, California, Washington, Oregon, we're going to start seeing some stuff on Massachusetts. We're going to start seeing some stuff on, I believe it was Illinois, Oklahoma, Virginia. We're going to start seeing some data start rolling out on these guys. But if you start looking at Washington, Oregon, California, and Colorado, they have some issues going on out there, specifically around some of this marijuana use, trying to get down to the bottom of it. There is some correlation of when they legalized, when they went full recreational, there is some correlation with that. Can we pinpoint that that's some of the problems with the degradation of societal standards out there? I don't believe so. I don't think we can, but it all correlates some way, shape, or form. Or maybe it was highlighted. I don't know. So we got to watch for that as well. We're missing an opportunity. We have a plant. I'm going to go at this as a plant. We got 25 to 50,000 products we can make out of this plant itself. Smoking Delta 9 is not the only thing from it. We're missing that entire opportunity at this point, even with the hemp program. So we got to fix that.
Agreed. Real quick, just double check our time here. Oh, we're 6:45 or 7:45 already. I don't want to drag us on too long. I want to start opening it up in case anybody does have some questions for our guest tonight. I know I've been a little bit educated, like I say, just by taking a little closer look at these decrim bills, and I 100% agree with you on that.
So the Arizona marijuana sales, they just had one from Colorado, said they were $2.2 billion, but they only taxed it at like 15%. So they brought in like $72 million total in taxes. So yes, my doctoral degree is in education, and I want to take marijuana or hemp and somehow fund some of our education system. So you hit right on some of the things I was doing a research paper on. We just have to make sure it's done in the proper manner. We don't need to demonize marijuana, but we don't need to glorify marijuana at the same time. So we need to use it appropriately. And I was just writing to some of the people I am going to a church school. I'm not going to start Bible thumping on anything, but Genesis clearly states that God gave us all seed-bearing plants and herbs on earth for us to use. So I am a wholehearted believer that everything on earth is given to us on purpose. 16%. I thought it was that's the taxes.
All right. I think we've had a very interesting conversation tonight, very informative. I do want to thank you for taking some time to be here with us today. I do want to remind our guests and anybody who might be viewing on our YouTube stream later on, a primary election day in South Carolina is June 14th this year. And So get out and vote. And then don't forget in November again to vote as well for in the generals. But if you do happen to live in Dorchester County, is that where
Dorchester
primarily
County, yes, sir.
District 98 is? If you happen to live in District 98, keep Mr. Greg Ford in mind when you're at the polls voting. And that's kind of all I have at the moment. Oh, Josh must have gotten disconnected here. I'll bring him back in for a wrap up. Is there anything else you'd like to mention as we wrap up this evening, Greg?
If you guys liked what you hear or have any questions, comments, concerns, whichever way, you can go to my website. There's a comment section that'll come directly to me. I will answer any question. I'm not scared. I'm not a politician. I'm not going to stand behind some BS. I will give you, a straight answer. If I can't get you the straight answer, we'll find something, or I'll have an open conversation with you and we'll try to figure out a direction. I'm fine with that. If you like what you hear and think that, our message is appropriate, there's also a link on that Greg Ford, votegregford.com to donate. We need money. I'm going to tell you, the lifeblood of any campaign is funding, and we have to raise some funds. No matter if I wanted to fund this all myself, we're going to get outfunded by most of those folks that you guys are up against that don't want decriminalization or marijuana on our streets. So I'm willing to play the game. I'm willing to go to bat. I have a, full right in, to my core for my son. So this is something big on my radar. We just have to figure out the appropriate way and the methodical way, logical way to make this happen.
All right. I appreciate you very much joining us. I also shared the link for your donation page. Again, if anybody has any questions or comments for Greg after the fact, feel free to reach out to him through his website. If you happen to be in District 98 and you like what you hear, don't forget to vote and share this information with your friends that may feel the same way. And let me just do this one last time, ask if anybody does have any questions or comments for Greg before we let him go.
I'm free to stay as long as you guys need to, whatever you guys need.
I must admit, I get scolded sometimes because a lot of times I'm of the old, if church runs 61 minutes, everybody's getting antsy and wants to get out of the church. And so usually when it hits right about 60 minutes, I'm ending the meeting. I was admonished once that says, maybe we want to hang out and chat a little bit longer. So that's actually what we do. We've open-ended the meeting since, but I don't want to keep you any longer than necessary if we don't have to. And I'm just going to kind of follow up with a couple of odds and end chapter business things that we're doing locally before we close out the meeting tonight. So,
yes, sir.
Again, thank you for coming. You're welcome to stay through the rest of it if you like, but we don't want to keep you from anything important that you might need to be doing.
Thank you, sir. Anything you guys need in the future, please feel free to get a hold of me. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you again. Have a great evening.
You
too. I'm going to kind of just finish up a little bit. We've had a couple of things going on locally with a chapter. We're sort of in discussions with a couple of other organizations trying to form a decriminalized Charleston coalition. Right now we have the ACLU of South Carolina on board with us, and I may have mentioned in our phone calls previously, Marijuana Policy Project will be kind of joining in on these efforts after South Carolina Compassionate Care Act crosses the governor's desk. Until then, they are focused specifically on the medical legislation. Also, the People's Budget Coalition here in Charleston is also another organization we're trying to work with coordinating into this program to start moving forward with our decrim of the city of Charleston as our first target for a decrim ordinance here in the state. We're planning a sort of I don't want to call it a kickoff event, but we plan on putting our information booth at Marion Square Park on April 23rd, which is the first Saturday following 420. It's pretty much going to be just an information booth. We've got a whole bunch of more brochures on order that include our Freedom Card. And one of the things we are also starting to schedule with this kickoff, see if I can show this without too much glare. We're looking to start scheduling some Know Your Rights workshops. I've made a list of a couple of Charleston libraries where we can rent some space, or not rent, but actually use some space in their conference rooms or auditoriums. Again, we're partnering with the ACLU on this. They've got a very good program on Know Your Rights. And again, if you get our Freedom Card, gives you a good description. We like to make sure that you keep those Freedom Cards with your ID in case you're ever stopped by law enforcement. So those will be coming up probably starting in April and moving through probably a couple of the summer months. If you happen to know a business location that has enough space to do a small Know Your Rights workshop, we'd probably be happy to try and schedule something in that location as well. Because again, as a civil rights, civil liberties organization, that's something that's really important to us, is that people know their rights when they're stopped by law enforcement, know that they don't have to consent to a search and seizure, know that they have a right to remain silent. My favorite one that people tend to forget about, the Sixth Amendment, your right to remain, right to not answer questions without an attorney present. If you invoke your Sixth Amendment right to not answer questions without an attorney present, and the enforcement officer continues asking you questions, you're actually violating your civil rights. Important information to know. So that's kind of what's going on at the chapter level, and what we're going to be working on more locally here in Charleston. Again, some of y'all might not be thrilled that we're focusing on Charleston to start, but it's more of a convenience thing for me because I live in the city of Charleston. I can talk directly to my city council person, and also, our ACLU support has their members right here in the Charleston area. I believe one of the ones that we're working closely with is in Mount Pleasant, which is, if I remember correctly, the 4th largest populated city in the state, and will probably be about 4th on our list. And so my plan is to kind of start with the biggest and go from there. So it would really be Charleston. Columbia is going to be a bit of a challenge because it's just a little further from me, but that's the 2nd largest municipality. North Charleston, which is not far from where I live, and then Mount Pleasant. Those are the first 4 we're going to be targeting as we move forward, and it's going to take some time. It really is. Just to work on Charleston alone, I'm figuring it's going to take a solid years of effort to get a proposal. I hope that they prove me wrong, and it takes less time, but I'm really more fearful that it'll take longer. Anyway, that's kind of the direction we're going. As a matter of fact, just before our call, I ordered about another 1,500 of our brochures because at a couple of the last events, we handed them out hot and heavy, and we're running a little bit low. So I did have to order some. In the future, as we're ordering more, I do like to remind our supporters and such that we do have a couple of coupon or spots on inside the brochure. So if your company or organization, where your company would like to sponsor the brochures by purchasing an ad spot, we'd be thrilled. It helps us cover the cost of the brochures that we hand out as fast and furious as we can. Another quick note is I did just get in the mail, or UPS, whatever brought it today, 100 new copies, I rephrase, 100 old copies of the Emerging Clinical Applications book. National has a bunch of the 2017 versions sitting around. They offered them to us at no cost, except for the cost of shipping. So we did ask them to send us 100 of them because the last batch that we ordered, I think we ordered 75 and we're down to about 7 or 8. We were having a great time at our press conference and lobby day, either handing them to the legislators or going office to office and just dropping them in their mailbox slot. trying to get as many of them out there. And I don't know if this was necessarily an asshole move or not, but I saw that the Attorney General, Alan Wilson, and his wife just 3 days ago, announced that she has been diagnosed with cancer. So I drafted a brief note from NORML wishing her well, speedy, healthy recovery, and included a copy of the book highlighted at the section that talks about gliomas and cancer. As you all know, Alan Wilson is an opponent of cannabis in pretty much every way that we're aware of, but we've also seen through the years of doing this that legislators that tend to get a personal touch by a family member and or themselves suffering from something that's benefited by cannabis use tend to have an evolving opinion as they go through that process. We can only hope so with the Attorney General, because I did also see today that a couple of days ago he announced running, but then I saw today that he actually filed the paperwork to run in this year's election. And at this point, there is absolutely no opponents to Alan Wilson running as the Attorney General. So I'm going to just put it out there. Please, 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 if you are or know someone that would like to run for Attorney General, that's, I guess, qualified to whatever, and has a more progressive cannabis reform attitude than AG Wilson, please file and run. We will support you in any way, shape we can. Please file to run against Attorney General Alan Wilson. I'm going to real quick read the comments here before we go. I don't know this particular story. I'm going to have to look into that. Let me go look that up. All righty, guys. Before we go, any other questions, comments, or concerns for me before I kind of end the meeting, or anybody want to just chat about anything else? Feel free to chime in. Oh, okay. She's an actress, Broadway. I'll have to look into that a little bit more. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to save that link and look at it. Appreciate the info from you all, guys. And again, thank you for joining me tonight. No plans at this point for what we're going to be discussing next week. I do have a couple of other legislators that I'm looking to reach out to. There is somebody running for Congress out of Sumter that I would like to invite onto our show. And also we have another another veteran and I believe cannabis supporter running for House District 97, covering parts of Dorchester and Colton County, that I'm hoping to be able to invite onto the program again in the next couple of weeks. We are getting closer and closer to that June primary date. Also talking about primaries, I just saw, I think today, Mia McLeod, although I know she was in the running for governor, I think officially filed her paperwork today or yesterday. And again, she is the one who has sponsored S335, which is a deschedule at the state level cannabis bill. She is a sponsor and a signer on the S150. But I have yet to get her to fill out our candidate questionnaire. So I'll keep trying. That's it. All I've got for tonight, folks. I really thank you for being here with me, and we will see you back here again next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Don't forget, keep an eye on our Facebook page. We post more there than any place. We do post to Instagram and Twitter as well. And don't forget to visit our website, scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page and click on the sign up for our newsletter. Until next Wednesday, have yourselves a great week, and we look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday. Have a good night, all.